there was a time period where I was uploading like 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. Now I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? How did I do that? Like, honestly, how did I manage to pull that one through? I look back and I don't know how I did it.
Before we get into the interview, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Elgato. We've had a lot of great creators on this podcast over the past 10 weeks. And what do they all have in common? An excellent streaming setup. Our friends at Elgato have launched the Wave DX, their first ever XLR microphone. And combined with the Wave XLR audio interface and the Wave mic arms, the Wave DX gives you the opportunity to level up your streaming setup. At a stunning $100 price point, the Wave DX outperforms much of the other microphones in its class. To learn more about the microphone, head over to elgato.com and check out the Wave DX. That's ELGATO.com. Thanks to Elgato for sponsoring this episode, and now back to our interview.
In sort of putting together all the assets for this show, we were like, what is Alpharad's title? Because you do so many different things. Which is a compliment, I think, to your creativity, right? Like
Thank
you're doing music. I first encountered your content while because you come from the Smash community, while you were doing you were probably 100,000 plus subs when I first found a lot of your content, but certainly not to the size and influence that you are now. But
that was like 100K was for me was like July 2015. I think
that sounds about right. I used to co-host a Super Smash Brothers show called the R Smash Bros AMA, and got to know a bunch of people in the Smash community. And so even though we hadn't personally met, I remember bumping into each other at events and paying attention to what you were doing. So, but I don't know the origin story of how you got into this, because that's when I started to find your content was about 7 years ago. Yeah. How did you start to get into this stuff?
I think I obviously, as you said, it comes from Smash. That's the secret ingredient. But I don't know. I was invested in gaming, but on a very casual spectrum. And it was, I feel like a lot of people in the esport realm, they kind of get very invested in the esports. They get good enough to where they're better than most, and then they kind of spread out and make their content. But it was kind of the reverse, where I was just a film school student who liked playing Smash Brothers at friend's house, and that was it. Didn't really have that competitive online drive or anything like that. But around the same time, my friends are I was freshman year of college, late 2014. I was showed montage parodies by my friends, and I was like, these suck. I was just these aren't edited well. And I'm very pretentious, kind of watching student films kind of vibe is where I'm at in my life. And I upload videos to Vimeo, not YouTube, kind of that kind of pretentious. Yeah. And so I was just I'll try and make one. And I did. And it was looking back, it was also bad, but it was good enough to warrant it maybe got a few 10,000 views or something. And when you have nothing, that's a lot. That's, it's not anything to make you be I'm going to quit my job. Oh, I have a career. I was that's cool. And I didn't really think anything of it again, because everyone who interacted with that was all very much cool, and moved on. But a couple months after Smash for Wii U dropped, there weren't any Smash YouTubers or anything at the time. That just didn't exist yet. And I was mainly a Melee player, and I went to my Melee weeklies, PM weeklies, and everything. And I never really thought to take Smash 4 seriously. And then my mom got me an HD capture card for Christmas, and I was none of the games I play use this. So, because we're just hauling CRTs everywhere. So I just decided to give Smash 4 a shot, made a montage parody inside that game, and this is kind of the first for fun content Smash has had. Looking back, and then I had people be you should do this again with another character, and I was for the first time ever, I was whoa, people want more from me. That's crazy. So then kind of I skipped class for the next 3 days to just bust out daily videos, just because for the first time ever someone wanted more from me, and that was just, I wasn't prepared for that. And that grind just kind of continued, and then I branched out of Smash, tried other games, and then eventually I got here somehow. That's kind of the loose origin story.
It's funny how similar we are in that sense. I actually started my esports career when I was in college as well. My sophomore year, the first semester, and the first paycheck that I made from this industry was to buy a Wii U and Smash 4.
Nice.
Which sort of
I used my FAFSA for
hell yeah
to buy a Wii U. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't come from much, so it was just like, it was like same. I was paid like I can't even remember the number. I think it was like 4 pence, like the UK currency, 4 pence per view on like an article. And I had like 2 things top out at the top of the League of Legends subreddit. And so I made like $250 an article or whatever, hit their cap and wrote 2 of them. Nice. And so it was like $500. Let's go. Like, let's go buy a Wii U. I think
I was like, I had a good paying job for being 18, but it was still like a lot of work and I was exhausted. But and my rent was like $400 a month. And then I got a FAFSA for like an extra, like it was like a $1,200 bonus, which I was like, that's a lot. My bank account suddenly has a comma in it. That's news. And I remember I came home with a Wii U and my roommate was like, are you sure? Are you sure you can swing that? Like that's to really put in perspective, like where we were at financially. It was like, we were having fun. We had enough to have fun, but we were definitely scraping by.
Yeah. Now that you say it, it's something I hadn't really thought about much, but you're right. Like Smash did not have a lot of sort of for fun content that wasn't like serious competitive stuff in it. But to me, it's also just like one of those games that has such, because Melee is as old as it is. And even before that, Smash 64, but Melee being a cultural phenomenon, that community has such a deep connection to gaming. I feel like I run into people in like every area of this space, and someone has a Smash story that is relevant to their life.
Yeah, no, they definitely do.
And so I'm almost stunned that like you found a niche that was so void of something, more broadly.
That's the most surprising thing. Like at the time, it didn't feel that way because I'm like, oh, Game Grumps played Smash on once, and I was like, yeah, that's filled. But I think seeing the landscape of Smash, like it can kind of be divided into like multiple eras and generations. Like I see like obviously there's a new generation born every time a new game drops. Like when Ultimate came out, like we got so much new blood because of that. But what was so interesting was like a lot of those people who rode that Ultimate wave were kind of already established from Smash 4. And it wasn't until really like the past year and a half where I've seen like all this new blood content creators erupt from Smash scene. And it's just so interesting to me, like how different they all are too, like it's weird that this new generation grew up watching me, and that feels weird, because they've all asked me to collaborate and everything, and they're all lovely people, but like they're nervous, and it's cute because because we've all dealt with it, and it's just so strange to me that like I don't know, you guys are getting like millions of views, you guys are doing fine, like
yeah.
It's just weird that these people, I guess it's like people I watch are surprised that I grew up watching them. It's a cycle that will never cease to continue, but it's just interesting to me.
What's interesting is one of those events that you recently did collaborate on and lent your channel to was the Ludwig Smash Invitational, and sort of, this is something I wanted to ask later on, but I think while we're on this topic, it's important to cover it here, which is sort of giving back to the community that made you. Even if it's not the thing that you need anymore, right? And so Ludwig's a great example of that in the sense, and we didn't get to talk about this super deeply with him on the show because he had a heart out, but talking to him about sort of more broadly, he comes from this community. One thing I can say just from my own personal experience about the Smash community is they're very quick to uplift you and sort of push you in a way that I haven't seen many of the esports / games community. They take real pride in having people that come from their walk of life as a community and pushing those people further and uplifting their content, which I always really appreciated. But Ludwig's way bigger than the Smash community now more broadly, but he feels drawn to continue to invest in it. And I get the sense that you do too. Why is that?
I I don't know. It's just because like you got to remember where you came from, right? I think Ludwig and I also had a very different relationship with the Smash community in our upbringing. So whereas like when Ludwig erupted, like he was at like this front face of Twitch, whereas like I feel like I kind of grew alongside the Smash community until I broke out. Whereas like I think like the biggest difference was Ludwig's content was kind of like a guy who plays Melee and goes to Melee events and has this connection. Whereas he was never like really constantly making content over Smash. Like that's not how he got his big break. It kind of is because like I feel like Ludwig's big break was like the roast of Hugo. And or was it? No, it was the roast of Scar. One of the two. I think it was Hugo. But anyways, I think like I had a kind of a rougher upbringing with the Smash community just because I think when my content first started out, it was memey, right? And it's like at the start, if you were on Reddit and everything, it's just like Reddit wasn't fond of me because it was memey and it was kind of like easy to shit on and be a little higher above. So I think like a lot of my like early on, at least my relation with the Smash community was like just fighting an uphill battle. But I always did it for like the ones who I knew like offline, right? Because I went to tournaments. I just knew a lot of people, and it's just like the real ones to me, like the Project M scene was always what was home to me. Because I think like that was the game I first got into Smash. That was the game I started competing in. That was the game where I met all my friends from. So it's just like, to me, like I'd always do anything to do it to them, even though like I don't really make PM content or anything. Like if there is ever a tournament I can promote or just like donate to like the pod, I typically always do, because it's hard to promote a game that is so hidden by Nintendo and things of the such. Because like I don't want to draw too many eyes on it, but I want to support it.
Yeah, but for those unfamiliar, because some of our audio audience aren't as plugged into gaming as others, Project M is a mod of Super Smash Brothers Brawl that makes it more similar to Super Smash Brothers Melee and its mechanics. And it's had a ongoing battle for now the better part of a decade.
Just
with
about.
Nintendo who continue to chase it and cease and desist it and threaten tournament organizers for running it, etc.
Allegedly is the word.
I won't say allegedly because I've seen some of those letters. I'm the reporter here, so okay. I know those things have happened.
I'm pleading ignorance because it's not public.
But nonetheless, it grew a very sizable community considering at its base root what it is, and many of the people that worked on that game went on to become very successful game. I mean,
there was an era in like 2014 when Project M was bigger competitively than both Brawl and Melee.
Yeah, it's true.
A cool time period. That was
when I
remember. Smash.
God, what tournament was it? It had to be like Forte 3 in 2015, and I remember like getting to play.
It was kind of like before Smash 4 came out. Was kind of like the heyday of Project M.
Yeah, so this had to be after Smash 4 came out, but it was at a time when I got to like play like a never released build before they shut down the project, and I was like, "This is the coolest shit ever." Like I think they like had Knuckles in the game and a couple other things.
Like, I feel like PM gets such a bad rep of being like this hyper competitive mod, because like in essence it is, but they do so many cool casual things in it too. They have all these fun skins, all these fun stages, unique items. I don't know, game and fun. Like they just have good game modes that somehow made their way into Smash Ultimate, completely unrelated.
Yeah. It's hard to argue that Nintendo did not take some inspiration from some of the things that the mod did better. And rather than go the Valve route of like just enable the mod and like bring some of the people in house and let them have some of the keys to drive the car, they just killed the car. They blew up the car.
Yeah,
so
they do.
Yes, it's sad. Anywho, I want to talk about sort of the growth trajectory of your career, because it was slower. I mean, it was. You found success pretty quickly. Like I said, I've discovered your content after 100K, but it's taken longer for you to get to like where you are now. I think you're at like 2.8 million on YouTube,
Something
right?
Is that
right? somewhere in that area. When did this become like a viable thing for you to do for a living, though? What was that metric?
I think, like, just to nitpick, I think, like, I don't know, growth is so different now. Like, I think, like, one thing is, like, for my time period when I first got, like, my following, it felt fast and comparatively was fast. But now creators blow up in, like, a matter of months, and it's crazy. I think it's just, like, the era is so different. I think, like, Ninja playing with Drake changed content, introduced so many people to it. I think, like, just like stuff like Dream SMP, and then just I think the pandemic as a whole, like, really just changed, like, the rate people can blow up, and I think it's really interesting. But that's a different thing. I think, like, for mine, I was working a job in Oklahoma when my rent was $400 a month, and I was making, like, a consistent, like, $1,500 or so, which was pretty good for being 18 and in college. I didn't really have a lot of time, and then I started YouTube, and then that blew up. So it was about, like, 6 months of, like, I remember my first paycheck because I didn't realize you had to check ads on. So I had my first couple of months of YouTube, I got like $27 for like maybe 1 million or 2 million views. And then I was like, I feel, because, you know, all YouTubers lie and say they don't make money from videos. And I saw that and I was like, I guess it's true. And then I checked them, and then my next paycheck was $600. And I go, whoa, an extra $600 because this is a hobby for me. And then it went like $27, $600, $2,000. Like, and those were the months. And since I was making like $1,500, $2,000 for my job, I was like, one of these has a higher likelihood of going higher. And so I ended things with my job, who I liked, like, they loved me. We were really good to each other. And it was definitely on the table where if I needed to come back, I could. So I had a backup plan. I was like, all right, I'm quit this job, and then I'll focus on school and YouTube. And then that lasted about a year. And then eventually I was skipping too many classes to just see if this Little Mac amiibo can fight ice climbers or something. And then I just decided to take one semester off to see if things changed, because I was kind of like at like a low point of YouTube. Like in Smash 4, the whole, like, the landscape was just not as creative as it is now. It was just kind of like, oh, episode 37 of me playing online, you know? And like, no one had that creativity that exists in content now. But because of that, and the game just not being as popular as Ultimate was, I definitely stagnated. I think it was like 220K. Like, that number's in my mind. It's like, I stayed there for like a couple months, and then I was like, yeah, maybe this YouTube thing isn't cut out for me. And maybe I had my run, and I was in college, and I was like, I could, you know, about to finish, get my associates, and then move on out of community college and go into big boy school. And then after I did that, I was like, or not. So I just took a semester off and was like, I'll see if things change. And they did. And then I never went back.
Yeah.
So it was really like after I matched my salary when I was like, I'll try it.
Yeah, that was me too. I went from like having never written an article to then making $2,400 a month after a summer to write about esports, and then dropped out, and then 8 months later got the ESPN job. So
hey man, that's like, how it works, like, on
really
the internet.
Fast. Yeah, indeed. I went from having never written anything to working at the biggest sports publication in America in 16 months, which is a pretty rapid ascendancy. And similar age to you as well. I'm 25 now. We'll be 26 in March. So
yeah, I'm 27 in December, and it's just like, holy shit, the time changes.
Yeah. So was there like a spark of creativity for you? You were talking about sort of that more broadly, that people hadn't really found. Yeah, I think you're right. The content, especially around video games, got less about the video games and more about what you could do around the video games, you know, using the video games as a vehicle to do it. Was there a spark of creativity for you with that? Was there something you watched, or something that kind of inspired
at the start,
that?
or in like the last just on that point.
I mean, has there been something that sort of changed the way that you're viewing content?
Yes, and it's not like one specific thing, one specific trend, or one specific person. It's just like I've been doing this for roughly 8 years full time, and it's a lot's changed, and it's crazy. And I think like we're kind of everyone knows like what Mr. Beast is and what Mr. Beast has done, but it's so interesting to like understand the landscape of YouTube as well as I do and see how everything he's done has trickled down to everyone. Like content, like back then, you used to be able to just kind of like upload trendy things and succeed. Honestly, it was like still luck at the end of the day to find that initial bump. Because like the thing about YouTube is like, you even had Ludwig on who made the whole video like, is it just luck? And the answer is no. The answer is no, it's not luck. But the only people who would know how to do it have already done it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's almost more like what's the word? It's more saturated now, the type of content out there, right? Like you have to be like creative and different. So
it's just every video nowadays is just this declaration of accomplishment or a story or narrative. And I think for a lot of creators, like I've talked to a lot of other creators, but it's like the harder or the longer you do YouTube, the harder it gets because the more times you have to flip your style, you have to adapt. And then you have to make these conscious decisions where you're like, I understand that this is the direction I need to go to experience growth on this landscape, much like how esports can rapidly change metas, where it's just like, this is what people are doing. But the luxury as a creator is that I get to make the conscious decision. Do I want to do this or do I not? Because now it's like what do you treasure more? Is it this growth or this continuation of what you've established? And sometimes those can be the same path. Sometimes they overlap because sometimes creators, what they want to do exactly what will work. And that is so fortunate. But I think I've always struggled because it's like, I see it, I could, but I don't want to. I don't like being super social. I want to play my silly little games and make little stories out of that. And it works well enough and I'm happy with that. But it's just, man, I will never do a you laugh, you lose. It's not in my blood. I can't do it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those. That's I've watched too many of the like Hassan ones where they like, make them eat disgusting stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting too. I mean, especially when you think about like how you divvy it up among different channels, etc. too, right? And sort of the channel empire side of things. Like maybe you have content that people like that's different here and different here, right? And so you like put certain things in these buckets. And I think it's like the biggest thing that's scary for me, even thinking, when I'm new to the YouTube world this time around, I used to make videos forever ago, but have sort of been traditional journalists. I think the thing that's always like scary to me is like, what is the best use of time? I think that's different when I'm coming from the perspective of having been successful doing something else, journalism, right? And now like this is still at its core journalism. The mission statement is the same and it's doing well for itself. But at the same time, it's like, it's different when you've had sort of that early success. And so actually that kind of pivots a little bit into something I wanted to ask you about, which is music. You have been successful as a gaming creator, but you have more recently, in the past couple of years, gotten more into music and launched a music project, Ace of Hearts. And what was the impetus to do that? Was it just you wanted to try something different, or was there something else behind it?
I've done music my whole life, so it wasn't anything that was like new to me. It was just I never had time for it. I think I really pursued that music project. Like I started writing for it in March of 2019. And I think I was just so overwhelmed and bogged down by Alpharad, because any creator gets to that point where it's just like, just for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you just want to see numbers, right? Like you just want something to grow. And what's the best and worst part about the job is that the work that you put in is directly tied to how the numbers go. Like I used to work at a grocery store, and if I did a good job or a bad job for those 8 hours, I got paid the same. so you don't really have that initiative to grow or try harder. But in my job and like the YouTube, I was like, it's just every creator goes through that phase where it's just, you're working 16, 18-hour days and it's all you can do, all you can think about, and it's consuming. So I think I was kind of reaching that point of just ultimate burnout. And I was like, I want a hobby because I don't have any right now. It's also like that parasocial blend where you're like, oh, I don't even know the difference of Jacob and Alpharad anymore. It's just like I'm that person all the time. So they just merged into one being. And then suddenly I'm like, I need a personality stat. So I just explored some other hobbies. I've always liked music and I just decided to lean into that more. And I think with YouTube, back then, like getting 1 million subs was like an impossibility. Like there were only such a small number of channels that have even passed that milestone. And I think since I started my channel in that era, 1 million subs sounded like an impossibility to me. And that challenge was fun. And then eventually I hit it and it was kind of like, you reach the top of the mountain and you're just like, now what? So I struggled with that for a while because people would say stuff like, oh, just get 2 million subs. And it's like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could probably do that. It's just, it doesn't have that impossible drive to it. And it just loses the thrill. Like the chase was gone because I think I've lost a lot of motivation because it's just, how do you match that drive of something that once felt impossible? And I think that's where music kind of came in because I've always dabbled with music and I've always had this background, but I've never been able to like pursue it on my own project. And it's not like I ever thought it would be impossible, but it sounded hard. And I don't know. I think I was just drawn to that because I don't like starting from square one with something. But I already knew that I had this background in it. So it felt like I could kind of jump ship without, again, starting from square one.
Yeah. Was there a fear of failure associated with that? Like, can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. I think like with the songs, right? Like they're all cathartic, right? It's just, it feels good to let it out. It feels good to write. And you have all these elements of like, I think the music is good. I think the lyrical content, the story is good, but I was never a singer growing up. And it was kind of like, that was something I had to grow and pursue. And it was like, do I think I'm the best singer? No, but I think I proved myself wrong on that first album of just being able to put something together. Because I think like singing was always the hard thing for me. It was like the thing that never came naturally to me. So I think, and all the realm of things feeling impossible, that one was the thing where I was like, I'm going to have to try for this and it's not going to be easy and I'm going to want to quit. And I did. And I don't know. I think I did that. I made an album and then it was kind of like, well, now I want to make a second album immediately after. But I was kind of like, I've proved that I can make an album. I can just do that. But I want to prove that I can make something really good now, So it's like, I haven't uploaded or posted any music since that album came out because I'm just like, I just want to train my voice. I just want to practice, do better. So whenever I come out with something down the road, it's like, that's the new challenge, right? It's no longer just saying, can I make an album? It's, can I make it good or can I make it better?
So I want to ask you about creative balance because it's something that I think that all high-level successful creative people deal with. It's something we've actually not talked about a lot on the show. You have so many different things juggling, whether that be like sponsorship obligations, etc., the actual content you want to create, the music project previously, before you sort of paused on that and focused on and improving before you'd made the next thing. How are you dictating what is a valuable use of your time?
Like you only have 24 hours in a day and like a third of them goes to sleeping, which sucks. But I mean, it does. It's so much time wasted. It feels like, especially when you feel so busy. And then I kind of had this philosophy for a long time. I was very stubborn with handing off projects because like, oh, I have this creative vision and I want to execute it my way, and hiring people is hard who can't follow that perfect vision. So Eventually, I did come to the philosophy where it's like, I want more hours in the day. How do you do that? And if I was like, if you can hire people for 6 hours a day, it can make you feel like you have 30 hours in a day, you know? Even if it's not true, it hiring people always felt like buying time to me. But then you have to factor in that like you can create things faster than anyone else you hire because you are following the vision in your head. They have to follow what you say. They have to review. They have to do notes. They have to emulate what you do. And that's the hard part. So over the years, becoming a little more cynical, I think I've adapted it to like, if you pay for 6 hours, you're getting 3 hours of your time added to the day. It's now cut by half. And I don't know. I think like as long as you can guarantee you have like this pipeline of people working on stuff, you can kind of move your own schedule around as you wish. Like I would say that I have much more of an intact personal life now than I ever have before. And it's just a result of that balance. And it's like, it's a double-edged sword because now I'm always thinking in my head, I was like, I used to be so much more productive. But then I was like, I was also much more stressed and depressed and things of the such. And now it's like, it's weird to sit and be like, no, this is good. This is good. I could be growing more. I could be doing more, but I'm happy and I should focus on that. Like, that's like the mindset I've had to mold after 8 years.
Well, it's hard too when you're like truly passionate about what you're doing, because then like, you know, the sort of I could be productive comes from a place of like, I'm passionate. I have all this like work energy, ideas, etc. But it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like that's I think I struggle with that a lot too. Where it's
I was like, there was a time period where I was uploading like 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, and there would be like fully edited videos, and it was just me editing, you know. And now I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? How did I do that? Like, honestly, how did I manage to pull that one through? I look back and I don't know how I did it. The past, like, the first 6 years of Alpharad were like a blur to me. It just I blinked and I missed it.
It's also just age. I mean, like, not that either of us are particularly old, but it's like, the like drive energy that you have, like when you're like 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, like the amount of time, you're like a superhuman compared to,
I think like,
you know, get a little bit older.
The age matters, but I really think it's like just the first taste of success. Because like I know people in like who are like 28, 29 in early 30s, like when they first blow up in content and they go through the same cycle. It's really just like you're suddenly aware that your actions can grow everything so much more. So why not chase that, even if it's unhealthy?
Yeah, that's fair. I think the other thing though is just being devoid of like those social relationships, etc. too. Like you don't have to answer to anybody like when you're that young, right? Like at the end of the day, like the only person whose time you have to dictate is your own. It's not like you have family or whatever else or friends, like close friends that you have to like invest time to maintain those relationships, right? Like it's the other part of it. You can just head down, content, brain, go do whatever you want to do. So from a monetization perspective, and I think part of this also is that like building content, hiring teams, having other people work on stuff that isn't just you. I've talked to a lot of creators about this privately, but I'd love to get kind of your thoughts. When you have people that aren't you working on something and building products that are under the Alpharad brand or even the music brand, whatever it may be, any of the stuff you're doing. And then the same vein, you're also doing sponsor content, etc. You know, there's a level of this audience, gaming adjacent audience, whatever you want to call it. A lot of them can be very hypersensitive to authenticity. I feel like if if you do something just slightly different than before, it's very easily noticed and called out. And so like as building kind of that team around you, having other people work on things you're doing, and it's not just you anymore. How are you like trying to push through the through line of whatever the brand is or whatever, the standard is. So it is authentic to what your original vision was.
I mean, I went to school for editing. I was a freelance editor before I really had Alpharad or anything. So it's like, I always felt like the editing, the pacing, the music, the scoring, like that's what made an Alpharad video. I felt like it was very consistent, and I was like, I can't sacrifice that. And for a little bit, I try to dabble in editors. I try to like compromise, cut corners. But eventually what I found as like a middle ground was that I just asked the editors to put this video together to the best of their abilities. I watch it, I give some notes, they touch it up, and then they send me the project file. And then I might spend an hour or two touching it up and adding music to it. Cause it's just like, I always do the final cut. I always polish it because it's like, that's how it feels consistent. That's how it feels like me at the end of the day. Even if I only do like 10% of that work, that 10% changes everything, especially when you're talking about stuff like music and just pacing. But I write pretty detailed notes. I would say an annoying amount of notes. And but it gets exactly what I want. So it's not that bad. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. But I think like kind of touching on like that authenticity, what else is really hard is when you change as a person. I think that was the thing I've kind of dealt with in the past 2 years where like, I would say for 2020, for like mainly like all of 21, I kind of took the year off to kind of mental health stuff like that. And as a result, I changed drastically as a person, I felt. And it was for the better. Everything was good. I was happier. I was finally doing all these things I wanted to, not the things I felt like I needed to. And then I try to come back to content, and it's so strange because like if Alpharad was created at 18 and then this version of me was like 25, you kind of have to sit and ask yourself, like, if I didn't have this legacy of Alpharad behind me, like what kind of content would I want to make? Because you get so in these cycles of trying to continue what you started. But I'm not that 18-year-old who was making montage parodies and uploading funny aerials, like things of the such. Like I'm just older and I've changed, I've matured. My sense of humor has developed. And it's like, it becomes harder to branch off into like this new person because two things can happen to like these older fans. I guess three things. Like one, they stick with you, they mature with you. Two, they mature in different ways. Or three, they stay the exact same. And then you detour. So it's like, it's unlikely that you're always keeping the same fans. And I think that's what I've noticed over the past few years of like, if I feel like I'm making good quality content, that's all I really need. Because if other people go different ways, like this more, like that more, it's just like, yeah, people change. And it's hard presenting, like reintroducing yourself after all these lifelong changes over the past years of like, I've grown as a person. How do I make it clear to people that this completely different persona is also authentic? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a different you, right? Yeah. This was, I recently watched, because he put out a new comedy special, the Hassan Minhaj interview that he did with Khalid and Samir, where he talks about this a little bit. Like Hassan was one of the like early comedy YouTubers in the early 2010s, became very successful. He got recruited as a writer of The Daily Show and then kind of went out on his own. And he talks about that a lot. And it very resonated with me too, just like the development of what your content is.
Yeah.
And there is a portion, and I think maybe for Twitch, for live streamers in particular, because they have that access to you in real time, like they can sense the authenticity or not, right? Like it's very, if it's manufactured, you can tell when it's a live stream. But for people who make produced videos, highly produced videos, right? Like things you're cutting, editing, etc., and don't have that level of access all the time, I think that's a little bit tougher. But I definitely, I think I've seen creators who are just like bound. I mean, I felt that. It's funny how much like some of the stuff you're talking about kind of relates. Like my name was built in League of Legends roster reporting, and it's something that like, I don't know, it doesn't excite me in any particular way. I found it easy at one point where it was like, oh yeah, I can just like call somebody up and have a scoop done in like 10 or 15 minutes and like can write super fast 400 words and get it done. And it's like, that's not exciting to me anymore. Like it doesn't particularly push my drive as much as going through like hundreds of pages of legal docs and like figuring out what's the bigger picture scheme going on.
It's
here
just strange that some people think like doing what you're known for is the authentic form of yourself, when I feel like typically it's not. Like when I see someone who found one thing that works and then refuses to deviate from that one thing, I'm just like, that can't be fun.
Yeah, it's I think it saps. Well, it ultimately leads to a different kind of burnout, not necessarily just like work burnout, but the sort of burnout of I don't want to do this anymore, right?
Yeah, because I think the other issue with that is like you might get like short-term growth from like leaning into this thing super, super hard, but then you pigeonhole yourself even harder. And then it becomes harder to break out of that. Cause like I've always kind of formulated my content with that in mind, because I was like, oh, it was very hard to get out of Smash Brothers. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And every time like something new comes out that I really like, or I really want to lean into more, I always stagger it. Like even if I'm like, this is the thing that does best on my channel, I'm like, I don't want to make that my channel. Like, you know, like I want it to stay fun. Like I think like one example is like I love Pokemon Nuzlocke, and all of my Nuzlocke videos perform exponentially well. But if I lean into that, suddenly I'm the Nuzlocke guy, and I don't want to be that. And I don't like they do so well. So I'm like, I might do one like every 3 months or something like that, maybe even longer. But I was like, I don't want that to be like, I don't want to be known as that guy. Like exactly as you open this with, it's like, what do we label you as? I'm like, that's what I want. That's it.
Yeah. I think it's the other thing too is like there are a sizable amount of people that, especially in this like parasocial digital media world, access to creators via all forms of social media. I mean, hell, we open the space and I see like tweets in the tweet thread that are like, why am I in a call with Alpharad? Which is like it's like, yeah, I mean, this is just a Twitter space. This is what this is, right? Like, but I think that connection, that deeper connection that people have to what are ostensibly celebrities, right? Like it's what they are, micro celebrities, whatever you want to label, sort of successful YouTube creators, right? That are Hollywood famous. Like
they're
the connection
all just
that
one tweet away. It's weird.
Yeah, exactly. But in a way that builds this relationship where it's like people are along for the ride and for the development, which is nice. Like I had sort of a humbling moment this past weekend. I went to Atlanta for the League of Legends World Championship, and I was like sitting off to the side, like talking to Lit Tigers, the host of the LCS, and her and I were just having a conversation. Somebody came up and recognized her, and then like realized who I was. And they were just like, I remember like reading like your stuff in like 2015 or 2016. What have you been up to now? And like, I explained, and like rather than like, you know, them getting rather than me getting my feelings hurt that they didn't care about like the way that I changed, it was actually like, wait, like tell me the name of this stuff. Like I want to look it up. So I actually thought that was like super. I was like, thank God, like people understand that.
This takes it a completely different path, but I do want to tell you a funny story, something similar. I was with my good friend Jaden Animations and all that, you know, massive channel. Massive creator, and her and I were just like at like some like superstore, drugstore, or whatever, and we walked in, and they were like these two kids. I want to say like maybe 8th, 9th grade, and they were kind of like peeking around like the aisles and going back, like looking at their phones, looking at us, and I'm like, okay, they're not being subtle. You know, like I told Jane, I was like, I think these kids recognize us. I 100% think these kids recognize us. And then we check out and we're walking outside and they're waiting for us. And then the kids go, oh my God, Jane Animations. Oh my God, what are you doing here? Oh my God, huge fan. Take the picture. And I'm like sitting by the side. I'm like, yeah, I know, I get it. And then afterwards they go, oh my God, is that Alpharad too? And I'm like, yeah. And they go, cool. And then walk off. I don't know what I expected in my head, but like, I think it was like a psych out, because one, I was prepared to not get recognized, and then and then my expectations were raised.
Yeah, it's funny, like especially in sort of like public settings, etc. Like I was like literally trying to get out of the video state for burritos. Like, are you Jacob Wolf? And I was like, yes. And they're just like, nice to meet you, bro. And I'm like headed out in like a crowd of like 1,000 people. I'm just like, all right, this is. Like that's what that is. Okay, it's never a like normal experience, no matter how many times it happens. It's
no.
Weird. So
I was at. I think another favorite interaction lately was I like to mess around with strangers because they're all like NPCs in my mind. Sometimes fans are included in that. And one time I was at like Round 1 arcade, and some guy comes up and it's like, "Yo, are you Alpharad? I used to be a huge fan of your content." And I was like, used to be. Do you not watch it anymore? And then he goes, no, not really. And I go, okay, fair. And then he's like, see ya. No picture, nothing. I think I made it awkward for him, but I don't have any regrets. I thought he just took that and ran.
It used to be. Yeah, that's funny.
It's a bold opener, but I respected it.
Yeah, the bold indeed. So I'll read our first couple of audience questions. Mm-hmm. By the way, if you did ask one, please, my team has started to reach out, so please respond to their DMs if you want to actually ask it over voice. But I'll read the first two since they said they did not want to ask them over voice. Mm-hmm. So this is from the username is at Joyride Sands. Sands for Jetpack Joyride is the name.
Gotcha.
It is Alpha. Do you have it? Or do you have a least favorite video you have regrets for in any way? And bonus, less interactive questions. Have you ever streamed Pikmin?
No, I haven't streamed Pikmin before. That's an easy question to answer. I think my least favorite video, I don't think there's like a one least favorite video, but I think like every now and then, I'm sure you run into something like this where you get in the mode where you're uploading just to upload.
Yes.
And it's like, it's this video. I'm like, I can't name like a specific video, but I go through this phase like maybe once every like 6 months or so where you're like, it's like you have a video and you're like, oh, this didn't really turn out great, but I have to get something out. And then you upload it and then it performs poorly. And you're like, why'd I do that? And I think that's like kind of like what it goes in waves. Like sometimes you do that and then you have banger content after that. Like that fall is necessary for the rise. You know what I mean?
It's like the adrenaline up down of your career, right? Like I experienced this with like giant, scoop thing. I had to deal with this last year. I was working as like more of a managerial person. And then like last summer, I broke a story about the Department of Justice investigating Activision Blizzard. And I was just like the adrenaline through the roof. It's like, great, this is huge. Nobody else had this, like massive. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's that like rebound. You're totally right. So that's a good answer. The next one is from Aqua Ortis, which is Alpharad. What is your creative? Oh, praying for my team is saying wait, which means that they might actually want to ask.
Okay, yeah, we'll hold.
We're gonna actually have them out to ask it. If so,
my favorite part about Twitter Spaces is bringing random people on and interrogating them. Just putting that out there. It's a rush.
It's we've not had anybody be like comically disrespectful in this, which is good. I'm very pleased by like 13 weeks of doing this that nobody's been bad yet.
I had one Twitter Space. I think it was like the first one I ever did. It was like me. I think it was like Ultrive, Josh Schlatt. I want to say Connor was there. And we just brought, every time we saw a verified account we didn't recognize, we just brought them in. So we interviewed a lot of journalists. And no disrespect to your kind, but we were not kind to them.
Yeah. I would say a lot of them just don't. A lot of journalists like don't. They don't understand how to have fun. That's correct.
I think if you are on Twitter and you're verified, you deserve everything people say about you. As someone who's verified, I think I had it coming.
Yeah, I think it's my profession doesn't take kind of jokes. They don't get along well with comedy at all. So.
Yeah, I don't have many articles written about me. I wonder if that's related.
I don't know. A lot of people don't write about the creator economy. Actually, like there are not too many good like sources for people. No, not to mention it's also just fucking huge. Like they think about like how much there is to cover and how many creators there are in that sort of most relevant category, million plus subs or whatever metric you want to use to measure it. So the question is, Alpharad, what is your creative process when it comes to putting on live events? Stuff like Romeo plus Juliet and or the Cup Pong tourney, for example.
Yeah, those are two wildly different events too. But I mean, like all events, it all starts with an idea. And then like all events, the idea spirals. It's like the Cup Pong tournament was this massive production with 32 of the platform's biggest creators invited to play beer pong for charity. And it was a live event. It was a stream, and it was a success in all aspects. But the thing is, it started out as like I should make a video where I invite 8 friends to play beer pong in my backyard for a video. Like that's how it goes. It's it starts small and then you build and then it keeps going. And then eventually you get to a point where you have to reel it back. And that's the event. I think like for the Romeo and Juliet thing, it was just like, what's funny, right? Like what's doing I don't know, a play. We could do a play. Oh, that's so much work. It's just like, ooh, we could do a play. We could do a play, make it funny. Wait, we don't want to write a full play. That's a lot of work. And so then we're at that point where we're already at a live event. We want to rewrite a full play to make it funny. And then we're like, okay, how about we do a play with no rehearsals? And that's funnier. I agree. But we did that because it's easier. It's funny and it's easy. And it's just a little bit of prep work. So it's kind of like, I think that's how all those events start. They start with an idea, the idea gets too big, and then we bring it down.
Yeah, that's fair. Have you found the logistics of organizing those things to be pretty difficult as well?
Yeah, I mean, we have a full production team on payroll. So it's kind of like, it's all a matter of like how involved do I want to be. And I think like for all the ones I've done really well, I've been pretty involved because it's just like who knows my audience better than me, who knows what's going to work better than me with my audience. So it's a little back and forth, but I think like my team, when they're on it, like they just kill it, they knock it out of the park. And it's just really nice to be able to say, hey, I want to do this is like the elevator pitch, and I might storyboard a little idea out, and then suddenly it comes to life. Like for Romeo and Juliet, like that's super easy to hand off. But for something like Cup Pong, we had to bring in like a touring company for Real Good Touring to help us put on an event of that caliber. Because like it was just a lot. Like we have lights, we have live events, we have security, we have jibs. Like we just have so many roaming cameras. And above all else, it's a production. Like it's hard, especially when you rope in live events. So it just kind of depends on the scale of it, I guess. I think I rambled.
No, that makes sense. The next question is from It's GBAT, who is actually here to ask their question in person. So GBAT, if you want to unmute, Alpharad, turn up your phone.
I have an important question for Alpharad. What is your advice for the next generation content creators and Smash players?
Oh, okay. What is my advice for the next generation of content creators and Smash players? My advice to Smash players is get a job. And that's not a joke. And then my advice to content creators is a bit more lengthy. I don't know what I would tell Smash players. Is like, I don't know, get better at the game. It all esports leads to content at the end of the day. And yeah. But I think like the content landscape changes drastically. Like any advice I would give you probably wouldn't have worked 5 years ago and definitely won't work 2 years from now. It's so anything I could give you in specifics advice is just not applicable for what you're looking for. But I think like the one thing that is universal and will always remain true is to find content that you think is fun and that you think you could do even not even better, but just do. Because if you just kind of take something and reinvent it as your own, you will just keep branching off and deviating until you've eventually just found a new genre of content. Because like, like we were talking, Jacob, about how like there weren't really like Smash YouTubers at the time when I started, but there was one. There was one channel that had like under 10,000, I think had like 8,000 subs and made like occasional montage parodies. And their name was Kid Retro. And I'll always put respect on their name because it was like, I saw that and I was like, that's fun. I want to try that. And then I started my How to Play series and my whole channel popped off because of that. And it's just kind of, but it was different. It was the same kind of video, but it had like that personality flair that differentiated it. So I really think it's just like, same thing with music, like go listen to your favorite musician's favorite musician, and you'll learn something. And like, there's always like the YouTuber's YouTuber, the artist, stuff like that. And I think if you just keep going through, like you make something similar, just kind of put your own spin on it. And then when it comes to title thumbnails, that's like the hardest part for new YouTubers, in my opinion, is just look at what the landscape around you is doing and figure out how that applies to your video. And it's kind of hard because it forces you to rewire your brain at times. But I I think that's mainly it, though. Is just like kind of just do what you want to watch is my biggest advice. Make what you don't think people are making. Like if you feel like you're scrolling through YouTube because you can't find a video to watch, just make it. Just make that video you want to watch.
You mentioned YouTube and YouTube thumbnails, and you about triggered me. It's the part that I hate the least. It's not something I do. We have people on my team to do it, but I hate it. Hate it.
It's like, a science, dude. They're like, sometimes I'll find creators with like 30K subs, and I'm like, these are insane titles and thumbnails. And I'm like, they understand something. And then I'll check back, and it's like the next couple months, they have like 150K subs. And I'm like, it's never an accident.
Yeah, no, it is. We got some flack like a couple days ago from because when we had Ludwig on the show, he said a quote that was like, VCs are dumb as fuck, bro. And he was like talking about how venture capitalists are like looking at the content creation space. Yeah. And then we had Lester Chin, who is the former head of gaming at YouTube and now a venture capitalist, on the show.
Yeah.
And he actually did Ludwig's deal at YouTube. So we asked Lester about that, and somebody was like, why are you putting Ludwig in the thumbnail or whatever? And I was like, because one, he was on our show. Two, we had someone react to his clip. Like, that's fair game. Leave me alone. Like, it's his statement. Whatever. Leave me alone. Anyway, the next question is from Small Fry, who is also here to ask it.
So, Alpha, I was wondering, of all of like the IRL videos you've done, what has been your favorite one to make, and why?
Ooh. This is such an easy question. You don't even know. This might honestly fall under my favorite video I've made, where a while back last year, I put together an unsolvable escape room, and I didn't tell any of the participants that it was unsolvable. It felt like playing The Sims and deleting the doors, and just kind of observing. So why is kind of a dark answer. Maybe because, like, let's talk about like what the difference of a psychopath and a sociopath is, right? Like, a psychopath is someone who is doing these harmful things and just evoking pain and suffering onto other people without knowing. A sociopath is someone who does it while knowing.
Yeah.
I think you have your answer. All right. Have a good
day. Such a terrible, such an awful video concept to do to people anyway.
Dude, it was so fun. It was an hour of their time. It wasn't like, they weren't trapped in their Mr. Beast style 24 hours on an island.
Yeah. The things
I just made them think they lose. Too. But okay, here's the true sociopathic shit about that video was I had 3 teams, and I had one team, Team A, they went in first and they were in on it and they solved it because people expect that kind of stuff from me to make it unsolvable. But if they saw a team solve it already,
Yeah.
That was my evil genius moment.
We're going to end the night on this question. We've invited them, but if not, I will read it. But they said they wanted to ask it, which is from Luck-Based Luke.
Hi there. I just wanted to... My question has to do with the community that you've built over the years. I first subscribed with the Best Mario Amiibo video back in Smash 4, and, with the realization now that I'm in a college dorm now, going my first year, and I'm planning, I'm good friends with a lot of people who grew up with your content. I wanted to ask, how do you feel from, I mentioned, from God's perspective, in quotes, about the community that you've grown over all this time, and, I guess some of the ups and downs about it, because, I don't know, I just was interested to know how you felt about something that none of us can really experience in your eyes.
I'm going to ask you just to rephrase it a little bit of, is it just a pretty general question of how do I feel about my specific community or just having a community?
Okay, so word for word, what I typed out was, how do you feel about the community you've manifested through your content? I'm curious as to how it is from God's perspective. So it is a bit more general since...
Yeah. Oh, you mean the ego, or basically him having sort of sway and control? Is that where your question's coming from?
I wouldn't say necessarily the ego or whatnot, just the your fans are very active and somewhat vocal on social media and everything, and I'm sure you get a lot of things like people saying they love your content, art, people mentioning that they've made a bunch of friends through knowing who you are and just enjoying your content in general. Probably my biggest example is that like this summer I'm planning to go to SmashCon with a bunch of people that I met because they also loved watching you, like including the guy that you know as like Legalize Woohoo Island, who I'm like good friends with, and I just wanted to know like this whole like fan base that you've built up over the years from Smash content and now moving more towards a variety kind of energy. Just how does it feel to like wake up and be able to see all of like this happening throughout the years, like on your phone or whatever?
Okay, yeah, that's a long question. To kind of go through it blow by blow, I think it's like the true answer is that it's really difficult to visualize all of that. Like, I bond over YouTube with my friends, but like I can see that it's really hard for me specifically to believe that this all exists, I guess. Like, when I upload a video, I know that there's going to be numbers by it. There's going to be X amount of views. Like, I'm never surprised by that at this point because I have a near 3 million sub channel. Like, of course, I upload a video, there's going to be people who watch it. But the difficult part for me is like equating that to real life people. I don't know what wires aren't crossing my brain, but I can never visualize a comment as a human being. Like, I don't know why. Like, I see this Twitter account and it feels like I'm just playing some visual novel. It's some RPG where I have to navigate through these NPCs. And it's so weird to me where like none of it will ever feels real to me until I like go to a convention and talk to people. Like, even streaming, it just feels like, dude, if I was streaming and there was an automated chat log that went along with it, I wouldn't be the wiser, Like, it's weird to me that like I'm so grateful, but it feels so hard to be grateful from something that I barely even know exists. I don't know. It's a weird answer, but like I'm just happy that I'm able to do what I do, but I do owe it to like the people who watch. It's a combination of the work I put into it and the people who are willing to watch, like it's not one more than the other. But it's so strange to me to try to associate that with real people. So it's like I'm grateful. It's nice that I can live my life how I do. But God, it's so strange that this voice in my phone asking me this question is a real person. But yeah, I think it's a bizarre life to live, to have like random people stop you on the street and like ask to get a picture. And then it's like, whoa, that makes sense. But I always try to feign ignorance, like when people come up to me, I always have it in the back of my head. I was like, oh, are they a fan? Are they going to ask for a picture? And that's such a weird mindset to have, to be at that point where that's the first place my mind goes. And then sometimes they're like, try to talk to me. And I was like, I can never tell. Is this just a random person talking to me or like a fan? And I never really know at first, but then sometimes fans will be like, come the fuck on. You know why I'm here. And I'm like, I don't want to assume. So I think that's kind of like my back and forth. It's like, to answer your question, I don't really know.
I mean, I feel like it also just changes your social relationships in a lot of different ways too. Like to kind of play that guessing game. I think it's the hardest part talking to creators more than anything. This somewhat a somber note to end on, but nonetheless, I think the hardest part I've learned talking to creators, and I experience this far less than the rest of y'all that are, we're talking millions of size of audience, but figuring out who's there for the right reason, like in your life for the right reason, etc. Like it's so difficult. I'm so blessed that like I have people in my life, my girlfriend, like close friends, etc., who were with me when I was nobody. They did not care. And like hold on to those people. It's difficult.
That's how I was for so long. And then I have met good people through content, because like I don't think content creators are necessarily bad people, right? like you always hear what people say, like don't meet your heroes and all that. But I've met a lot of my heroes and they've all been very kind to me, because I don't think it's necessarily that a lot of creators are bad people, but it's hard meeting people in this industry because I feel like a lot of people are good-hearted people, but very consumed with their own life, their own brand, right? Like everyone in this industry is their main character of their own story. And I don't fault anyone for that. I think that's very common, like everyone is very busy with what they're doing and I can't fault anyone for it. But I think it's like, I don't know. I think that's kind of, I don't know. I don't know where I was taking this. Now it just sounds mean.
No, I think you're right. Especially in a world where something I've noticed, some of these creators, fame was not always the attainable thing to them, whether they fell into it accidentally or they were just doing it and then they found it, like there's a difference, right? Like there are people who are just like legitimate people. And I'm glad that the content, especially in gaming, content creator industry has shifted to people who, there's bad people in every industry, but there are also very good people. For a while there, it didn't feel like there was in gaming content creation.
Yeah, no, I agree
7 years ago, 8 years ago. There were a lot of people who were just bad people. Like they were there for self-enrichment or whatever else. And so I'm glad it's changed. Now it's a bigger pot. You got good people, you got bad people. It's just like anything else. So yeah. Anywho, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Jacob, for coming on as a guest. Much appreciated. I'm glad we were able to arrange this. And yeah, thank you all again so much for listening. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks for watching Visionaries on YouTube. For more content, please subscribe to the Overcome channel.